growing up on Mount Hermeneutics, see, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go and talk about holiness and cleanliness and atonement and more holiness. And if you haven't guessed yet, we're talking about the book of Leviticus because that's the funnest, most fun book that there is in the whole entire Old Testament. So keep it right here, and maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you won't. Maybe you don't care. Anyway, keep it here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck. No, he made it up.
Oh, you actually made
not
up this concept.
Not today, but he made it up.
Yeah, there's no ecclesia. Like if you
new
look up
heresy from Brian.
it's not a heresy.
Look at the big heresy on Brian.
Not my opinion. It's the truth.
Even though you made it up.
This is also terrible show content. We should move on.
You brought it up.
Remember that Mount Hermeneutics is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. And if you're watching this on the video feed, you're watching YouTube. So if you are watching YouTube, go ahead and hit that notification bell, hit like, subscribe, share with everybody you've ever met in your entire life. And if you're first time with us, I'm Andre. That is Matt. That is Brian. Tell us what's happening.
Hey, Dre. Hey, Matt.
The funnest.
The funnest.
I think you really sold that. I think you really built some excitement up over.
It's Leviticus, baby. Like we're talking.
We gotta get hyped.
Laws.
Let's go.
We're talking laws. I am the law.
I suppose I should say up front.
We're talking atonement now. Atonement.
Yeah, that I am to blame for this. If you don't like Leviticus, it's
the guy throws himself under the bus. Here we are with a unified front, trying to like do a show, get people pumped about old school law and why it's significant today. And he's if you don't like
Leviticus. I just I take Leviticus is all about taking responsibility for your sin.
Brian is the Eeyore of our show. Thanks for noticing me.
Dre, you were so busy with that retort, you missed Brian's heresy that he just slid in right there.
I did? What?
Yeah. When you said I was just trying to, take the blame for your sin.
What the fuck, dude?
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. You just said it.
That's not what I said. I said Leviticus is all about taking responsibility for your sin,
which you were comparing to your responsibility,
which I was doing, and I can't take.
No shit. That's what I thought you said. I was like,
remember when ODB wanted to call himself Jesus Christ?
Yes.
ODB.
Old dirty bastard.
The Sports Center anchor is like, when that bastard dies for my sins, then I'll call him Jesus Christ. I remember that it was in the 90s sometime.
Yep.
I don't know what any of that means. I mean, I know who Jesus Christ is, and I understand about dying for sins, but the rest of that is totally.
Old dirty bastard did not die.
He was part of the Wu-Tang.
Okay. Well, I mean that.
You're not familiar with the Wu-Tang Clan?
They're a rapper group.
The rapper group. Yeah, they rap presents. I mean, we just got finished with Christmas. Yes, the other day was Boxing Day.
Protect your neck.
How was Christmas though, fellas?
It was good. Christmas was good.
It was good.
Yeah.
You do a bunch of Odin worshiping, or
there was very little.
Very little Odin.
I'm happy to report there's very little worship of Odin in my household. We had some friends and family over. We did a Christmas brunch instead of dinner, just to kind of break it up because everybody's trying to cram in dinners and go from dinner to dinner kind of thing.
Right.
And then we popped over to my mom's for supper, if you will. And then came home. But it was good.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, having all three kids and all three grandchildren in one place, and I just sat quietly and watched.
Yeah,
it was one
while
of the
they worshipped
best
Odin.
best thing ever. Yeah, yeah. You know, uh, passing gifts around. I even had gifts. That's new. So it's like people bought me stuff. Wow, wow.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Is it fragile?
Major award.
No, this was our first with Susie, so that was different. Like, she's too young to know what's going on, right? She's
Right.
just being a terror.
But
But
she's way Tupac in that bitch. Like all eyes on me. Right. So yeah.
yeah, that's for sure. Brian, were you home by yourself?
Uh, I went to my sister's house on a couple days after,
Okay.
where my other sisters and my dad, my stepmom, and other relations were there, and I
Other kin.
yeah, me and my brother-in-law and my niece's new husband were outside smoking cigars while the debauchery and Odin worship was ensuing inside.
While the Yule log was burning and
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it was all right. I had a good conversation with my sister's boyfriend about why Christianity is true.
okay.
He was
That's a
agnostic,
that's a good
and
time to have the conversation.
Look at you with the evangelizing.
yeah, I didn't really, it was more of a, it was a conversation. When I have conversations with people, they tend to,
Did you put him onto our podcast?
what's that?
You tell him all his questions could be answered if he just clicked on our show.
I mentioned that I have a podcast, and then I defined our podcast as we record our Zoom calls and post it online, and and thousands of millions of people listen. But
Well, that's what a podcast is.
yeah,
For the
yeah.
thousands in attendance and the
But
millions watching round the world.
I may have said dozens, but he was impressed. He was
Yeah,
impressed. But yeah, so it was a good time.
good.
I always feel like an alien when my family gathers for Christmas, and because it's not about Jesus Christ. And I don't want to rehash last week's episode, but for more on my thoughts on that, I refer you to last week's episode. But
Nice.
yeah,
We want to
so here we are.
we want to get started with some rapid fire.
Let's do it.
All right, so
Well, I need a new graphic. We need like rapid fire, and then
rapid
like some
fire.
graphics to like. I got to work on that because that'd be good. I
Um,
have no idea what to do with it, but
now
Well,
some of these
let me maybe intro the topic so people know why we're talking about this. Um, just I'll keep it quick. Leviticus is obviously, I think, without controversy, the least read, most neglected book in the entire Bible. Um, but it's also the single most important book in the entire Bible.
single most important book in the entire Bible.
It is the single most important book in the entire Bible, which I will justify after rapid fire. But that's and it's something I've been camping out on a bit, and it lately, and it's sort of it's
Least
kind of
read.
open. I
I
think it's probably the least
I would
read.
qualify that. I think for all of the people that start reading the Bible, like beginning this year, I'm going to read the Bible from start to finish, right? I think they get to Leviticus and stop. So I think the first couple of pages of Leviticus are as often read as Genesis. But I think the middle to the end of Leviticus, I think, is the least read, for
So
sure.
you're kind of agreeing with me.
Kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
people get to it and they're just like, what? And they just go, bro. They tap out. They're like, ceasefire. Like,
I think the last three or four books of the Old Testament is probably the least read. People
probably
don't even know they exist.
right. That's probably more true. But
Yeah,
it's
so
because of
Leviticus.
Leviticus.
You say things like Zechariah, and they're like, "Huh?"
Zechariah is actually
Jude.
super dope, but it's all the more dope if you read and understand Leviticus.
And the broken record begins.
And
We-
you're laughing at that. I'll justify it later, but we'll get to that. So anyway, If I'm that concludes my introduction. If you guys want
That
to move on
concludes,
to
this concludes the introduction.
That is good.
Now,
So, well, there's
rapid
a
fire.
word from our sponsors.
Rapid fire brought to you by, I don't know, what's on my
Yes.
desk? Kleenex.
Kleenex.
Kleenex
Kleenex
tissues.
is like, sweet, that's got free dozens of people just
first one's
swallow.
free Kleenex, next one's going to cost you.
So some of these questions uh do have the ability to have super long answers. I'm saying
Brian,
So
don't do
so
that.
just
don't do that. It
don't
hurts
do
my
Just
that.
ears when you do that.
don't do it. Don't
All
do it.
right, I'll try to restrain myself.
Okay. Are we ready?
But
I
that's
need
kind
to,
of on you though, if
it's not on me.
since you came up with the
Just
questions.
keep this. I mean, I suppose I could restructure the question and turn it into a yes
True
or
or
no.
false?
True or false? True or false? Leviticus is the least read.
True.
True, true.
Ah.
Lightning round.
All right. Why is Leviticus so focused on sacrifices?
Um,
To justify to cleanse, absolve one of sin.
because without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins, and no one can come into the presence of God guilty of sin.
Not bad, Brian. See, that could have been a long answer, but it wasn't. So the first one
I
knocked it out
wasn't
of the
done
park.
yet.
Well, you are. So are clean and unclean the same as moral good and evil?
No.
They are adjacent, but not the same. But they are, we'll get into that.
Why do Christians often say the Leviticus no longer applies?
Um,
Because of the new covenant.
it it certainly applies literarily, but yeah, it's a different covenant that is a setup for the new covenant, and under the new covenant, it's completed.
What's the purpose of dietary laws?
Cultural separation to preserve holiness.
Yeah, it's close enough.
I'll give that point
Okay.
to Matt. And what is the Day of Atonement really about?
It is about, in the immediate sense, it is about cleansing the temple and the nation's sins for the year in order to maintain God's presence among the people. Ultimately, prophetically, typologically, it is about Jesus Christ.
I would have said it's the Hebrew version of New Year's, which is
It is
essentially,
that.
yeah,
It is that too,
yeah,
but I mean, but we don't have we
a
don't
religious
sacrifice
tie
animals
into
to
New
God
Year's. Yeah.
at New
Yeah.
Year's.
Yeah,
It
but I'm
just
just talking about how
happens.
people are like, resolutions, new year, new me. I'm going to stop doing all those terrible things I did. I'm going to be better. Yeah.
Is Leviticus only about ritual and not love or ethics?
Absolutely not. The love and ethics is predicated upon the ritual.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what that means, so I'm not going to respond.
What does be holy for I am holy mean practically?
It's aspirational.
Um, it means that in order to be in God's presence and to benefit from God's presence among you, you have to be like God. You have to adopt God's values and hate what God hates and love what God loves. And that leads to life and health and strength and beauty and a prosperous, secure society.
Why does Leviticus include blessings and curses?
Um,
Without
well,
without darkness, you don't have light.
because
Light creates shadows.
um I mean, I think it's, incentives, and it's also justice. God wants them to maintain the covenant, and he promises it's not transactional in the sense that necessarily that they're earning it, but being holy and in God's presence leads to, like, you're in the right relationship with God, and he's going to bless you. If you are hostile to God by breaking the covenant, he's going to curse you. And being outside of his presence is itself a curse. But yeah, I mean it's like, yeah, well, it's rapid fire. I'll leave it there.
And the last question, being as it's the least read yet most important book of the Bible,
Allegedly.
why should modern readers study Leviticus at all?
Because if you don't understand Leviticus, you can't understand anything else.
You can't understand anything else?
Right.
Interesting. Okay. And that concludes Rapid Fire. All right. Okay, so we're done with rapid fire. Now, you said something earlier when we opened, Brian, that Leviticus is the most important book of the Bible.
Mhm.
And you promised us that you would demonstrate why that's the truth. So I'm going to give the floor to you, and you have, I don't know, less than 10 minutes to make that happen.
I can do it in
I can name that
nine and a
tune in
half
three
minutes.
notes.
Name that tune.
All right, Brian,
All right.
go.
So why is it the most important book in the Bible? Most importantly, why am I stating that as an objective fact and not my opinion? Um, like I'm not telling you in my, it's my favorite book of the Bible. It's not. I'm telling you that it is objectively the most important book of the Bible. It's because the Bible itself tells us that in the way that the Bible is structured. So the Torah is, you guys familiar with chiastic structure or a chiasm? I mentioned it before, and you might have come across it in your own Bible readings. It's a
No,
pretty
let's say no.
Okay. So a chiastic structure, it's from the Greek letter chi. It's X-shaped, and it's basically like the Gospels are full of them. It's where you have like kind of like outer like this, the first point and the last point and the points in between kind of point into a central point. Like it's like an X. It points inward to a central point that everything hinges upon. And there are examples from the Gospels, like whoever tries to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Um, the Gospel of Matthew is set up as a chiasm largely because it mirrors, well, not largely, entirely because it mirrors the Torah. The Torah is set up as a chiasm in that the book of Genesis and the book of Deuteronomy mirror each other in terms of their themes and purposes. And then the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers mirror each other. Um, they're both Exodus, they're coming out of Egypt into the wilderness. Numbers, they're in the wilderness on their way to the promised land. But they all four books point inward to Leviticus as sort of as the central thesis of the Torah. And Leviticus itself is set up as a chiasm pointing inward to the Day of Atonement. And like everything in the Torah, like when you see that and understand it, like how it's structured and why it's structured, everything in the Torah is leading up to that moment of the Day of Atonement, and then looking back on the Day of Atonement. The larger meaning of that is that God is present with them as his people. God now dwells among the Israelites. They live in tabernacles in the wilderness. God himself dwells in a tabernacle in the wilderness, and it's it, it's all about God coming to dwell among his people. And the entire Torah is looking ahead toward this moment when this happens. And once it does happen, everything else is looking backwards upon it. And then you have Matthew's gospel, it's arranged around five discourses, each of which mirrors the corresponding book in the Torah. Like the Sermon on the Mount mirrors Genesis in that it's about their identity as the chosen people. Um, The next one is the apostolic discourse. It mirrors the book of Exodus because he sends them out two by two. Um, the third one is the parabolic discourse, which is about I give you the secrets to the kingdom of heaven, but to the rest I speak in parables, so that they may be ever seeing, never perceiving, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, he has kind of the inner priesthood, who are his disciples, who get the truth that is hidden from the public, while the public gets only the outward meaning of the parables. The narrative that proceeds from that, it culminates in Jesus' transfiguration on the mountain, where they're atop the sacred mountain and the glory of God envelops the mountain and they're in the presence of God. That parallels the Holy of Holies in the temple, which is the central point of Leviticus. And then you have, the other two discourses likewise mirror Numbers and Deuteronomy, and I'm not going to get into the details, but like seeing that structure and how it centers on the book of Leviticus informs everything else about the Bible. Like the Torah is the foundation on which the biblical narrative is built, and Leviticus is the central axis on which everything else revolves. And I think people have sort of a maybe like an intellectual doctrinal understanding of what Leviticus is about. But if you don't read it, if you don't like immerse yourself in the narrative of Leviticus and kind of look at it from the inside out, you're not really. It's one thing to know to know the answers to a test question about doctrine. It's another thing to kind of internalize the sensibilities that are being communicated in Leviticus. And so reading it and understanding it it's part of the transformation that being a Christian should entail from studying the scriptures. But the bottom line is, I could go on and on about it, but we are told by the structure of the Bible itself how important Leviticus is. And then once you understand those themes, they repeat throughout the Bible, and everything is looking back on that. And there are some examples of that we'll get into as we go, but that's the gist of why it's so important.
Hmm. So, first of all, good job, 6 minutes. Um, for those playing along at home, in case the word chiasm is new to you, it's spelled CHI. So if you're off to go Google it and look it up or chat GPT it or whatever, that's how you spell it, CHI, chiasm. Um, Two, I think the easiest way to think about this chiastic approach or whatever, and Brian, help me, I mean, tell me if this resonates with you, because I love to do dumb analogies. It's kind of like Russian nesting dolls, because the
That's a
Bible,
perfect analogy,
the Bible,
actually.
thanks, I appreciate that. The Bible, like what Brian was saying is in the Torah, the first 5 books, they do this chiasm, but there's chiasms within chiasms, right? So there's these multi-layered chiastic things going on. This was clearly a a natural or well understood uh, teaching style or literary style, whatever you want to write, however you want to call it.
And it was a mnemonic device that was used in oral traditions
Right,
as exampled by Jesus' teachings.
right. Um, but the idea is that this isn't like something that scholars in 2025 are coming up with as to a way to retro explain the Torah. This was something that was intentional in how the stories were constructed. I'm not saying that the stories were synthetic and manipulated. I'm saying that the way it was compiled was intentional and purposeful, because it matched this literary style.
And
Um,
really the genius of the Torah comes through in this structure. So it's rather than challenging its divine inspiration and authority, it kind of like it's such a work of elegant genius in its structure that like it has to be divinely inspired.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to throw a couple of images in the description if I can figure out how to nest that, or otherwise I'll stick a couple here right now while I'm talking in post production. But uh, to restate what Brian was saying is the Bible, the first five books do this one. Basically, it's A, B, C, B, A, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then within Leviticus, the chapters are broken down that way in sections. And then even within a chapter, it's broken down that way. So Leviticus could be drawn out and you could color code it and put a bunch of tabs and stuff. And you could see this chiastic style over and over. And Brian, so there's been a joke. Brian read this book and recommended it to me. And for those listening, it's called Who Shall Ascend the Mountain of the Lord? And I found this to be one of the most painfully difficult books. I only made it about this far into the book and I tapped out. Like I couldn't read this. It's terrible. Brian, you did a better job explaining what it was trying to explain than the book did. So like
Well,
I don't give you flowers often, but Michael Morales can suck it because he doesn't know how to write in a way that normal people can consume information. But you explained the whole first chunk of this book in 6 minutes.
well, L. Michael Morales is I loved that book. I could not get enough of the book.
You don't say.
It's like it. I think if once you kind of get into it, you'll appreciate it a lot more. And one of the other things that he gets into is how the temple like this is really kind of that you get this more from Exodus where it describes all like this the all of the different elements of the temple and how they were constructed and I also finished a book called I forget the name of the guy who wrote it, The Ark of the Covenant in its Egyptian Context, and it's like this catalog of all the types of furniture that they use in Egyptian religion, and it kind of explaining how the Ark of the Covenant and the Tabernacle were made kind of in the same style according to the same um, technical construction techniques that would have been known. And it's kind of to push back against the critical scholarly view, which is that the Torah is largely the product of the Babylonian exile, that the Jews in exile kind kind of invented this narrative, maybe out of some prior oral tradition, but largely invented in Babylon to kind of give themselves a sense of identity and to sort of cope with their exile. But the fact that the description is Egyptian in character of the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle and the temple furniture and how it was constructed. This is knowledge they would not have had centuries later in Babylon. So
Why? Why wouldn't they?
well,
If
we know,
that was the major superpower that had all of the influence, I mean, that's like saying that you wouldn't know what McDonald's is in Japan,
well,
right? And there's lots of architecture
well,
and
it's not the geography so much as the centuries that elapsed between, like it's describing specifically late Bronze Age Egyptian uh, cultic furniture, supposedly in the sixth century, in the early Iron Age. Like they didn't have like Google or Wikipedia where they could look this stuff up. Like if it's a product of that time and that place, it would it the presumption is that it would have reflected the the cultic and construction ideas of the time. Like altars would have been made of stone instead of acacia wood overlaid with bronze, which is a distinctly Egyptian thing. We now know about all of these construction techniques and styles from late Bronze Age Egypt because we've discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun
so
and
you're saying
other.
that if they were actually in Egypt and there was an oral tradition that went for centuries and the fact that they would still preserve that in their writings, then that shows that it wasn't a new writing that came out of Babylon to cope, but actually a tradition that came from Egypt.
Yeah,
Okay.
this reflects something that they only would have known about from that time and place. Because it wasn't the kind of knowledge that was preserved across centuries in different
Are you sure
cultures.
though? Like why would it not be the knowledge that was preserved across centuries?
Well, the
How do we know
Babylonians,
that?
can we absolutely prove they didn't know that? Well, I think we can. And by the way, this is the argument of scholars. Um, this isn't my opinion that I'm telling you, but um, they didn't have that kind of they didn't have a discipline of study akin to archaeology. They were concerned with their own any given culture, like the Babylonians or Jews living in Babylon. Um, the only reason they would have had to preserve that knowledge from late Bronze Age Egypt into for centuries into Babylon is if they had as if they got it from the time from their ancestors. Like it wouldn't have been something they could have looked up in a library in Babylon to 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 invent a story about an Egyptian style reliquary and tabernacle and altars. It's something that would only be known from the time, just simply because we know. I mean, we can reproduce from writings of the time, from inscriptions, from their own architectural and cultic styles, what the kinds of things the Babylonians were interested in, and it wasn't late Bronze Age Egyptian worship practices.
So,
Um,
and apologies to the audience for taking us down this rabbit hole, but yeah, I think those are pushback questions that I can anticipate in the
yeah,
comment section. Yeah.
those are fair questions. I don't at all. I don't find any fault with you for asking those questions. Um, but yeah, it was kind of a rabbit hole. But the important thing from about the tabernacle and then the temple is that it was an architectural recreation of the Garden of Eden. Um, and there's all kinds of different elements that add up to say that. Some examples being like you have the cherubim on the ark on the mercy seat that are a callback to the cherubim guarding the way to the tree of life with a flaming sword. You have the cherubim on the curtain to the Holy of Holies. You have the menorah, which represents the tree of life. Um, you have the bronze laver out front where the priests would wash. This represented the river that flowed from Eden that nourished the world, and it's typical of kind of cosmic mountain imagery from the ancient Near East where the gods were pictured living atop a mountain. That's what the Garden of Eden was essentially was. The entrance is on the east. They were exiled from the garden to the east. So the farther you go in west, the closer you get to the presence of God in the Holy of Holies. Um, and there's other stuff I could go on and on, but the point of it is to and it's also like a portable Mount Sinai, which Mount Sinai was itself kind of a recreation of the Garden of Eden. It's this holy mountain where the presence of God was. Um, but his glory was veiled in clouds and thick darkness, lest the people see his glory directly and be destroyed by it. Um, but it was so basically, a portable Mount Sinai, an architectural recreation of the Garden of Eden, and so it was by offering the sacrifices and coming into the presence of God. It was basically a preview of the restoration of the world to back to that Edenic paradise where God dwelled with man. Um, but um, but anyway, I was kind of we were discussing why it was so important. And I think I covered that. Did you guys have any more questions about that before I went on to the structure of Leviticus? Like what it's actually saying?
No, I'm good.
Do you agree that that makes the case for its importance, or is that still something that you're skeptical about?
I, I, I think it's clear when one considers the literary style, right? The literary techniques. I think that makes it clear that Leviticus is the center of the Torah. And I think then when you carry that out to its natural progression, Yom Kippur becomes the literary center of Leviticus. Spoiler alert,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the
Yeah.
point of it. Is it's if you take all the chiastic jumps, you end up at what is it, Leviticus 16,
Yeah.
which talks about the Day of Atonement. So I think if you do that, and by the way, it's no coincidence that if you were to grab any Jew and say, "What's the most holy day?" they would say Yom Kippur, right? They don't say
Right.
Hanukkah.
Right.
They don't say any of the other deals. That's not. This isn't like a contrarian conversation. This is like a no,
Sandy Koufax didn't pitch that day.
right? Because it's the most. It's the
And
holy.
we're
Yeah,
talking playoff time,
right.
right? So
Yeah. So I don't. I think that tracks, right?
Okay.
To keep our style. I think where it's going to get interesting and is how we then extrapolate that to say that was, excuse me,
Bless you, my child.
how we take that to say, this then, Yom Kippur somehow triangulates over to the New Testament and then becomes, the continuously central theme of what's going on in the rest of in Christianity.
Like that's you're saying you're skeptical of that,
Yeah.
or
Well, I'm saying like that's the part that I'm not like, I think the first part, like we could roll credits, right? If this show is about what's the most important part of the Torah, we're already done. Like I think that's beyond contestation, right? So then so the question is, how do we take that and turn that into, why do I care as a Christian?
okay.
and even more than that, to say that's the most important book in the Bible.
Right. Because it's the most important in in the first five, but
Right.
we've got 61 other books. And the chiastic style doesn't continue into the New Testament.
Well, but you do agree that that is the narrative foundation. Like everything else in the Old Testament is builds on the Torah. Um,
Agreed, but
and
I'm actually taking it to a step that says I don't understand why there's not a line, why we don't draw a line to this day. I know the Jews do, right? The Pentateuch, I don't know how you pronounce that.
the Pentateuch,
Pentateuch means the first five, right? So
the
like
five books, yeah.
they consider those separate from the rest of the Torah. Not that one's less or more, but there's a line drawn there as because that chiasticism doesn't continue, right? It stops there.
Well, because
Or does it? I guess I should pose that as a question.
well, I mean, you do find other examples of that chiastic structure and throughout the Bible, but as far as across five books that are like I can think of one off the top of my head in John, which is this is actually a good. We'll put a pin in this because I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but John midway through like chapter 2 where he cleanses the temple up through midway chapter 4 where he's speaking with the Samaritan woman on the well. That's a perfect example of another chiasm, and it's predicated on the importance of the temple. And you can't understand the importance of and it's really the temple itself is what's centrally important, but Leviticus is like the instruction manual of the temple, and you understand why the temple is important and what it means for the life of the nation and for the end times. Like there is eschatology in the book of Leviticus. It's implied eschatology. It's not it's some of it's explicit, but it's mostly implied. But like it's a setup for everything that follows, which is what we'll discuss. But anyway, put a pin in John 2 through 4 as another chiasm, and two, a chiasm that is predicated on the importance of the temple. Also, Zechariah 3 is another kind of, it's not a chiasm. Maybe it is, and I just haven't discovered it yet, but it is something that you can't really understand without understanding Leviticus, and it's kind of a bridge from the Old Testament, from Leviticus and the Old Testament up to the New Covenant, up to Jesus. Zechariah 3. That's a keeper. Um, but yeah, with that, if you like, you want me to go through the like kind of a high level, go through the what Leviticus says?
Sure. Yeah.
You guys ready for that?
Yep.
Okay. So the first,
I mean, to be honest, we should put a pin in some of the other stuff because this show is supposed to be about Leviticus, but
well, but I don't know what you mean by that.
just go finish what you were about to say.
So the first 8 chapters, which I agree, they're kind of dry. Um, they're they read like stereo instructions because they literally are instructions for how to offer sacrifices. And if you don't understand the importance of the sacrifices, it's kind of hard to get into. But it's basically first 8 chapters, how to offer sacrifices. Um, Chapter 8 is about how to consecrate the priesthood, what they're like the ritual for consecrating them as people, consecrating their priestly garments so that they can function as priests. Chapter 9 is where it all comes to a head. They are consecrated as priests. They don their priestly vestments. They offer the sacrifices for the people. So all of the sin offerings and the whole point of it is because people are sinful. Sin cannot exist in the presence of a holy God without being destroyed. Sinful people cannot, and you see this throughout the Bible where like somebody sees God and they panic because I've seen God, woe is me, I'm undone, I'm going to die. Because like they understand sin and impurity, corruption cannot exist in the presence of God without being destroyed. In order to come into God's presence, your guilt has to be covered. Blood must be shed to cover your sin to come into the presence of God, and that's the reason for the sacrifices. That's why they're needed. So this comes to a head in Leviticus 9. They offer the sacrifices necessary and the priest represent. The job of a priest is to represent the people, and so the priest comes into God's presence on behalf of the people. So it's as if the people are there in God's presence through him, and God's presence is with the people through him. Um, so you have this concept of vicarious representation before God, and you have substitutionary atonement and the blood being offered, and then it comes to a high point in Leviticus 9, after they offer the sacrifices and Moses and Aaron go into the Holy of Holies, into the presence of God, and then they come out and Aaron blesses the people. And then it says that the glory of Yahweh appeared to the people, and fire from Yahweh came out and consumed the offering, and the people shouted and fell on their faces before Yahweh. So this was like it's a few verses and it's easy to miss, especially if you're skimming the book and you don't know the structure or where it's going. But it's at the end of chapter 9. This is the high point of the book because the offerings have been accepted. The priests have entered the presence of God, and the glory of God appears to the people. They shout, fall on their faces. Um, and it's immediately followed by a very, very low point. It goes from glory to existential horror like on a dime. It's the next chapter 10. Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense, and they offered unauthorized fire before Yahweh, contrary to his command. So fire came out from the presence of Yahweh and consumed them, and they died before Yahweh. Moses then said to Aaron, "This is what Yahweh spoke of when he said, 'Among those who approach me, I will be proved holy. In the sight of all the people, I will be honored.'" Aaron remained silent. And then it gives some details about Aaron's relatives coming in and taking Nadab and Abihu out of the temple. And so now, like, the point being, you approach God on his terms, period. If you deviate from those terms, um, you die. It's a
You get
matter of life
smited.
and death. Um, yeah, and the gist is, and you get this idea established in Genesis 3. On the day you eat of it, you will surely die. And they ate of it. They were banished from God's presence. Something had to die to give them garments of skin, to cover their sin and shame, but they are still exiled from God's presence. You get the sense they still worshiped God outside the the gates of the Garden of Eden, like when Cain and Abel are offering sacrifice, and then Cain murders Abel, and he's exiled farther east. The farther east you go, the farther from God's presence you are, which is part of the temple arrangement. But that the recurring theme, which is emphasized in the book of Leviticus, is that the default setting for all of humanity is separation from God leading to death. God is life itself. He's the ground of existence. He's the source of all life and goodness and beauty and health. But we are corrupt, and by default separated from him. The only way to come into his presence is with the shedding of blood. And it has to be on his terms, because he's supreme. He doesn't he God does not conform to us. Absolute goodness does not conform to corruption. We must conform to him, and that's kind of the overriding point here. Nadab and Abihu thought they could approach God on their own terms, and they were struck down for it. But now they have a problem in that you've got two dead bodies in the tabernacle, in the holy place. And so now the temple has been defiled. And so then the next several chapters from 11 up through 15 are about how they're about this idea of ritual cleanliness, where it's talking about, like, in view of this occasion of removing two dead bodies from the tabernacle, God gives Moses instructions for how the priests are to be cleansed if they touch a dead body, where they're not supposed to touch a dead body. But you get all the general cleanliness rules about how corpses are to be handled, and how people are to be ritually purified after they've handled a corpse in order to come back into the congregation worshiping at the tabernacle. Things like how women can purify themselves after their period, what to do if you have mold in your house, and all kinds of things. And you get there's an overriding theme of keeping like things in the correct category. Don't mix different kinds of seeds in the same field. Don't wear mixed fabrics. To where you get the kosher dietary laws, and it's all about keeping the Israelites culturally distinct. Well, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. That comes up later. But the part from the deaths of Nadab and Abihu up until chapter 16, where the Day of Atonement is, it's all about how to keep and maintain ritual purity. And the point if you kind of immerse yourself in this and internalize the sensibilities that's being conveyed, the overall the overall idea is that God himself, being in the presence of God where the temple is, God is life, and with life there is health and beauty and strength and cleanliness, and it's a place where life flourishes. But outside of God's presence, the further you get, it's corruption and death and disease and infirmity and ugliness. And it's the sensibility that it conveys is to kind of create a disgust response around the things that keep you from God. Um, there that that which is clean and fit for the presence of God is good and right and beautiful and healthy. That which is unclean is gross and disgusting and infectious and diseased, and that disqualifies you. Finally, it culminates in the Day of Atonement, where which is cleanses Israel's sin for the year. And there's the two unblemished male goats, a year old. I think they're a year old. Anyway, they cast lots for which is to be the sin offering, which is to be the scapegoat. Well, they offer a series of sacrifices for the people, then for the priests, and then when they have a king, for the king. And it's different kinds of sacrifices, but it culminates in the goat for the sin offering and the scapegoat. They cast lots to see which is which. The scapegoat, they lay their hands on him and they confess the sins of the nation, and they place the sins ritually on the goat's head and lead it away to the east. It's being banished from God's presence, while the other goat is offered in sacrifice to cover their sins. And the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies, and he goes in three times. First for the people, and he offers incense, and then for himself, and I forget what the third one is, but anyway, he goes in three times and he offers incense, and the smoke of the incense is supposed to shield his eyes from God's glory, because if he looks at God's glory directly, he dies. And if the sacrifice isn't acceptable, he dies. If there's something wrong, if there's unconfessed sin, if they are ritually unclean, the high priest dies. And the bottom line is, it's to reiterate this idea that coming into God's presence in an unworthy manner with an unacceptable sacrifice is death. After that, you get after the Day of Atonement, you have some stuff about warnings against use of blood for any other context, because the life is in the blood, and it belongs to God. And then you get kind of the results of this holiness. That it's chapter 18, chapter 17, after the Day of Atonement. It's all about it's about blood and not eating the sacrifices anywhere other than at the temple. Then chapter 18 is where you get all kind of the prohibitions against certain sexual activity. And then 19 and 20, and I think a few chapters later, it's basically the social laws. Like, this is how Israel is going to live. It's where, and the love your neighbor as yourself stuff. There's a social ethic that is created by them living in the presence of God, having God dwelling among them. And it's supposed to result in them living in such a way that is worthy of the people of God. It's supposed to have this transformative effect on them as a society, um, which is it occurs to me reading Paul's letters, or really any of the other epistles. It's sort of structured the same way. You have a lot of doctrine up front that talks about the fact that we are in Christ, and that we've been given this new birth and new life and regeneration in the Spirit. And having established that, then it goes into, like, Ephesians is a good example. Then it goes into how to live according to this. Leviticus is kind of the same thing. It's the cultic temple offering stuff is up front, and once that's established and their sins are purified and are their sins are expiated and they're in the presence of God and they see God's glory because of the acceptance of the sacrifice, that the consequence is this holy living that's described in the ensuing chapters. Then after that you have um, mention of the festivals that they're supposed to keep each year. Passover, Feast of Tabernacles, Pentecost, and of course, the Day of Atonement again. But then it talks about this keeping the Sabbath once a week, then the Sabbath years once every 7 years, and then the year of Jubilee, which is every 50th year. Maybe it's every 49. I think it's every 49th. But the year of Jubilee is when all of the land is given rest, and it's this sort of picture of the end times when there's this renewal of all things and all debts are canceled and everything is kind of set back to its pristine state, and it's very evocative of the end times. And then in the last chapter you have the blessings and the curses, where God promises, if you keep my commandments, if you maintain these sacrifices, if you maintain my presence among you, in essence, all of these blessings will come upon you. And then he warns of curses. There's something, I think this is worth reading specifically because it's pretty beautiful, and it might be prophetic, but well, I'll just read it and let you guys decide. I will look on you with favor and make you, this is from chapter 26, which is like kind of the climax of the book. I will look on you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your numbers, and I will keep my covenant with you. You will still be eating last year's harvest when you have to move it out to make room for the new. I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I am Yahweh your God, who brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. I've never read any other interpretation of this way, but when I read verse 12, I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I kind of wonder if it's literal, if it's talking about the incarnation. Um, but I'm not dogmatic on it. It's just something I think about. And
Well,
then in
it
verse
could be messianic or it could be just sheer end times, right?
um well, that would be if it's end times, it's messianic, but
Well, but messianic already happened. I'm talking about like it was prophetic either way, but messianic wouldn't necessarily mean apocalyptic. That's what I
um
mean when I say end times. When he's saying walk among you, like did he mean Christ or did he mean Christ when he returns?
right. Did it first coming or second coming, you mean?
Right. Yeah.
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 Um but and then it concludes with curses. And I think this is relevant to today. He All the punishments for disobedience, bad stuff's going to happen: sudden terror, wasting disease, fever that will destroy your sight, sap your strength. I will punish you for your sins 7 times over, break down your stubborn pride. Wild animals will come against them, destroy their children, invaders, plague. And then But if they will confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and their hostility toward me, which made me hostile toward them, so that I sent them into the land of their enemies, then when their uncircumcised hearts are humbled and they pay for their sin, I will remember my covenant with Jacob and my covenant with Isaac and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land, for the land will be deserted by them and will enjoy its Sabbath while it lies desolate without them. They will pay for their sins because they rejected my laws and abhorred my decrees. Yet in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or abhor them so as to destroy them completely, breaking my covenant with them. I am Yahweh their God, but for their sake I will remember the covenant with their ancestors, whom are brought out of Egypt in the sight of the nations to be their God. I am Yahweh. These are the decrees, the laws, and the regulations that Yahweh established at Mount Sinai between himself and the Israelites through Moses. Sorry, I left out an important part. Um, I kind of alluded to this already, but it's so you have Nadab and Abihu being killed on in Leviticus 10, and then that occasions all of the discussions about cleanliness and how to maintain their ritual purity leading to the Day of Atonement. Chapter 16, which describes the Day of Atonement, starts with Yahweh spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron who died when they approached Yahweh. So all of this stuff from chapter 10 through 15, that's all in one day, leading to the Day of Atonement. So this is in direct response to the deaths of Nadab and Abihu. It's so I just thought that was important to point out that these aren't just like abstract by the way laws that he decides to give them for no particular reason. It's directly related to that. Um but yeah, overall this gives the rationale for the temple sacrifice system, and the bottom line is that this is the life of the Jewish nation is tied up in their entire identity is in God being present among them, and to maintain God's presence among them, they have to they have to offer daily sin offerings, and then once a year the Day of Atonement, which is the one time of year that the high priest can go into the Holy of Holies where God is present. But then after that, in the book of Numbers, which is kind of, looking back on this incredible thing of the God of the universe dwelling among them in a tent in the Holy of Holies. It gives instructions for when they break camp and move and travel in the wilderness. Each clan of the Levites is given their responsibilities for which element of the tabernacle, which piece of furniture, um, to pack up and carry through the wilderness. But in the instructions, it says the rationale for the instructions is do not let the Merarites or the Gershonites or the die. Do not let them perish from among you. Keep them from perishing by covering these items so that they don't see them and die. Like they're not
No pressure.
Yeah, they're not to touch them. You absolutely can't touch them without dying, but don't even look at them. So they'll it's the
Like,
Aaronic.
why my clan?
If you look at him in a dream, you better wake up and apologize.
It's kind of like that, yeah. But the sons of Aaron were to cover them with like the altar of showbread, cover it with a blue cloth, and then cover that with fine leather, and it has to be packed up just so when the Levites carry it, they don't die, they don't accidentally see it and die. And
Leviticus is a big old op order. It's just SMEAC.
Well, I thought Brian made a really cute, subtle Beetlejuice reference
I
when he
didn't
started
mean.
this. When you said it reads
Did
like
I?
stereo instructions.
Was that from Beetlejuice?
Yeah. When they had the Book of the Dead, they were reading. They're like, this reads like stereo instructions. It became like a running joke that everybody said that when they read the book.
Huh. I don't remember that. I thought it was being original. Dang
You were
it.
not.
Well, okay.
I thought it was a really. I was like, ah, look at that. He's making it.
Nice. You should have just went with it, Brian. Like, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
referencing things
Super
that are
clever.
hilarious.
So yeah. Do you guys have I talked a lot. Do you guys have any questions? Have I sold it yet, or do you Are you still skeptical?
Well, you didn't sell anything. You just described all of Leviticus.
Okay. So, do you have any questions or objections to or
No, I don't.
thoughts to add?
No,
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. That's what happened in Leviticus.
I don't feel like anything in Leviticus is really up for debate, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not one of the books that people are like, I don't know. I've still got some theological questions about it. I mean, there's some subtle things in there, like to your point about, was that a prophetic line in there? I think it reads prophetically. Um, is it, is everybody, agreed on that? Does it matter? No.
Well, and
Um,
I wouldn't argue for it if somebody was inclined to not see it that way because
right.
it's
That's what
not
I'm
really the
saying.
point.
It
But
doesn't really carry anything. It's more of one of those little subtle throwaway lines that it's like, oh, that's in there. Okay, cool. Um, I, the Day of Atonement stuff is a really big deal, obviously. Um, it's funny because I was kind of reading ahead, right, when we talked about how does this apply to Christianity and all those things as it jumps forward. And I just hit something that I'd never really came across before while you were talking, and it's um, the Qumran scrolls. And I don't know if you guys are. We didn't talk about it during the appropriate episode. I'm kind of surprised in hindsight, but 11Q13 is the Melchizedek scroll.
yeah,
Are you guys familiar with that scroll?
I don't think I am.
A little bit.
So, I mean, I mean, I didn't read the scroll, obviously, but I was reading about it. And in that scroll, it's basically a retelling of Psalm 82,
Hmm.
but it's first person by
Melchizedek.
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 Chiseled dick.
But he's telling the story. And it says he is there with Elohim in the divine council. Um, anyway, there's some really interesting linkage that Big M is alluding to the Son of God and the Day of Atonement. There's actually really hardcore linkage between 11Q13, the Day of Atonement, and the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, which I find fascinating when we were just literally talking about that.
Um,
But it's linked through.
like Melchizedek is pictured as offering
No, he's
the
saying this is going to happen. He's speaking as as Most High's the priest of the Most High, and that the Son of Man will the ultimate Day of Atonement will occur. Like he's actually predicting that. And that's in this scroll.
um okay. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Um so like but the and again, like I said before, it's I can say how important it is and describe the things that happen at a high level, but it's one thing to kind of get that as a doctrine, as a proposition and affirm it. It's another thing to kind of to inhabit it, to read it and study it and meditate on it and internalize the sensibilities that it's conveying of the just the one, the absolute terror of coming in of being in God's presence, coupled with the absolute unbelievable glory and joy of being in God's presence. And it's given the Garden of Eden callbacks, it's kind of like a partial, it's a partial restoration to Eden. Like the high priest entering on behalf of the people is essentially kind of getting a temporary reprieve from the curse, in which humanity is banished from God's presence, and this is what made Israel special among nations, and it's kind of the beachhead by which God establishes his restoration of the world. That's kind of you're getting that eschatological restoration to Eden once, in once a year on the Day of Atonement, but also on an ongoing basis through God's continued dwelling with Israel. And it's just the vital importance of that to the nation is underscored all the more through the exile, when they lose that, and what that means to them to 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 be the people of Israel, but not have God dwell among them. Um, but that kind of points to the passage from Zechariah I was talking about, that I think illustrates a lot of these things and what it meant to them. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Did you guys have more? Did you guys have any questions or comments about that? Dre, what do you think? I see your wheels spinning.
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think it's straightforward. I don't
All
I
right.
yeah, I don't think there's debate. Like it's uh stereo instructions are pretty straightforward. I
All right.
yeah,
Well,
I don't know how it could be interpreted any different. And
are
I don't have any pushback.
are there rapid fire questions that would be appropriate here? I don't remember all of them.
Uh, this is awesome content.
Well,
Matt can edit this out.
Yeah.
yeah, the problem is that, Brian, this isn't conversational, right? Like you're presenting this and it's like, okay, but
Yeah,
it doesn't have anything there's nothing in this um that's really designed for conversation, or it doesn't have a spot for it. And it's not a criticism,
Well,
it's just what it is. Like it's a fucking TED talk,
it's a
not a
it
conversation.
it's Leviticus. It's you know but really I think uh I think the important question is like
So what?
why do I care about this
That's
today?
the part that you haven't said anything about yet. Like you've talked,
Which is a good build up
okay,
to where it's a foundation that's been set, but why do modern readers study Leviticus at all?
yeah. Why put myself through reading this book?
Right.
Like, no, I'm
And
being serious. Like, what am I going to get out of this book that matters to my Christianity? How is my theology going to become interesting or more sound or more correct by understanding Leviticus?
and at the same time, why do Christians often say that Leviticus no longer applies? So here we are saying that it's the most important book and that it's the linchpin of everything that hinges on I mean, we just talked about the prophecy there and why we should study it. But at the same time, if we should be studying it, why do Christians quite often say
No, I'd
it
flip it the
doesn't
other way.
it doesn't matter?
I would flip it the other way because we said in lightning round that, Christ's covenant obviates Leviticus. So if it's obviated, then why spend time on it?
well, because you can't. I mean, if you don't understand what Leviticus is and what it teaches and the importance of it to the Jewish people, then then you don't understand how Jesus' sacrifice obviates it. Like, he didn't replace it; he completed it. And the
Okay.
idea, um, this is the model for his sacrifice.
But this, Brian, this is one of those things where I push back and I say, me having a 100% sound philosophical understanding of penal substitution doesn't take away from the fact that I simply need to accept that he died for my sins. Like, I don't need to have read Leviticus and know that it's chiastic in nature and understand that Yom Kippur is the most important day for the Jews for me to say, I believe that Jesus died for my sins. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
that's my pushback. I'm saying, so what? Like, I've moved past that. And I'm not saying me, Matt, I'm saying me, the guy that's pushing back against you, right? Like, I'm
The
like,
well,
royal we
yeah,
Christians.
if I've already accepted Jesus and I believe in penal substitution and I believe that my sins required blood and that blood was shed by the Son of Man, the Messiah, and I accept all of that, I'm repentant for my sins. I've been baptized. I've done all these things. Why the hell do I need to read Leviticus?
well, I think you're getting it backwards. I think reading and understanding Leviticus is what makes all of that meaningful.
Somebody had to
Um,
read it to explain it to me, but how do I become more Christian by
well,
going and reading this after I've already accepted it?
Well, and again, like I said before, it's one thing to accept it as an intellectual proposition, but when you're inside the narrative and you're internalizing the sensibilities being conveyed, that becomes a lot more meaningful and personal when you understand that you are the temple now, that like you by default being in God's presence means you should be dead, and again, understanding that intellectually is not the same as immersing yourself in the text and kind of you know experiencing it in the theater of the mind as you're immersed in the narrative. It makes it more personal, and you also understand that like that restored Garden of Eden that's actually in you personally. And all of those blessings that it's talking about, this idea of, well, the temporary nature of it, like how, again, like I'm telling you what's true, but there's a difference between accepting it as propositionally and experiencing it through the narrative. Um, so it's just really kind of a pitch to like encourage people to read it and experience it for themselves. But it also opens up the like when you read the rest of the narrative without having grappled with that and camped out on that meaning, it the importance of later events, like when Solomon builds the temple and the glory cloud of God's presence descends upon the temple. But then later, when Ezekiel has his vision, when the glory cloud of God's presence leaves the temple, like the ramifications for that, for the Jewish people as his covenant people, like that sinks in a way that it doesn't really if you're just kind of flying by picking it up as a set of propositions and then moving on.
Okay.
It's
Okay. Let me I think I just got it. So what you're saying is the contention or the offer, the argument is if an individual is interested in really understanding the color behind literally everything that happened in the Bible, you should start with Leviticus to understand the core concepts of Hebrew, early Hebrew, ancient Near Eastern beliefs, the belief system, because all of the things that happen beyond Leviticus are colored by Leviticus and vice versa. Is that kind of what you're saying?
more or less, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I would obviously I'd start with Genesis,
Well,
but
right,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
but
you
we've
know
all
what you're
read
yeah,
saying.
like
Genesis, right? Like
Right,
everybody's read
everybody
Genesis.
has.
But the point is, I've not read Leviticus. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Dre hasn't read Leviticus. We've both probably tried more than once
It's been
and
20 years
tapped
since
out.
I've read it. Yeah.
Um,
You
but
know, I,
but like Leviticus is the culmination of what you read in Genesis and Exodus.
right,
That's what it's all pointing toward. So in a way, like you haven't read Genesis or Exodus if you haven't read
sure,
Leviticus. And likewise, it's like watching Star Wars and Return of the Jedi, but you skip Empire Strikes Back.
it's okay.
Um,
It's not okay. What's wrong with you? You know, I think the thing that resonated the most with me is your answer to Matt's pushback was that it becomes personal. And to me, if it doesn't become personal, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
You're just reciting lines, or you're doing, Pascal's proposition. If you're supposed to have a relationship with Jesus, not just believe in him. And if you don't understand what the temple is, and then understand that you are the temple, and by saying that, you're like, oh, you're the temple. Well, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Right?
What does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
Right, yes. So God dwells in me, sweet, but what's the historical significance of God dwelling
Yeah,
among the people in the temple? So in that regard, to me, that is super important. And to me, if you don't have a personal relationship with God, then what are you doing?
right.
Yeah. I think thank you, Dre. That's very well put. Um, and I wish I'd put it that well.
You did.
Matt,
You just
Well,
Matt,
it took my pushback for the we had to get the
for you to get it out.
conversation.
Yeah.
We had to synthesize what we were all trying to say. So it takes a village.
but Leviticus, and you really get God's, like, when you, if you can kind of, you have to read it with a certain, within a certain scope. Like, and it's best to kind of read it in one sitting if you can. And it's okay to kind of skim the the instructions for the sacrifices, I think, because it's like, it's, for one, that's not there primarily to be read. That's that's there primarily to be carried out. Um, like, and it's, if you can read it
If we're
and
not
kind
the
of,
ones, if we're not on the temple set up and
Right,
tear down
if I'm not
committee,
right, if
then
I'm
why
not on
does
the
it matter?
committee,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
I'm not on the if I'm not on the working party,
right.
then
like
I don't.
it would be best if we could be witnesses to this in operation, but reading it and kind of putting yourself there mentally is the next best thing. But when you do that, like, this, God's personality is, it really comes through in Leviticus, like what he values and what he wants from us and what it means to live in his presence. That comes through. That you can't get that just from doctrine. You kind of have to try to experience it as best you can from reading it. And this isn't, to be completely honest, God is scary. God is, like, he's terrifying. But
Oh, he's a cool dude, bro.
what Leviticus really communicates is, like, from our perspective, he seems like a villain. Like, he seems menacing. But when you understand it, when you kind of pass through the purposes and intent of Leviticus, what comes through is that that sense of menace is not really because God is the villain, it's because we are. And he is graciously providing a way for his people to know him. But when you kind of, when you get yourself in that headspace, and you understand, like, this is how the temple operated for centuries. Daily offerings for sin, the annual Day of Atonement, lots of sacrifice, lots of shed blood, lots of burnt offerings. That's what it took to be in God's presence. And it was a terrible thing to have to keep witnessing for a great thing, to be in God's presence, to be in the presence of the creator of the universe. But it also strikes me that when you kind of internalize the lessons of Leviticus, it then when you hear that the two most popular arguments for atheism, the problem of evil and divine hiddenness. This doesn't just answer them, it renders them laughable. Um, do you guys see where I'm going with this, or should I?
Oh, I do. Yeah. I mean, I it's maybe it's a little much to unpackage for, a new listener that doesn't know what those two things are and doesn't know our positions on those. But yeah, I
Well,
get where you're
I
going.
think I think I can get through it pretty quick. 3 minutes, time me. Um, so the problem of evil, best is summed up by the Epicurean dilemma. God is definitionally all loving, all powerful, but evil exists. So either God allows evil either because he wants to get rid of it but can't, which means he's not all powerful, which means he's not God, or he can get rid of it but he doesn't want to, which means he's not all loving and therefore not God, therefore God doesn't exist. Um, but then when you consider that, well, you're the evil that you're asking him to eradicate, um, then you realize that it's out of his love for us that he is hidden, that we don't see God visibly, that God isn't obviously here among us
You want
because
him to
we
wipe
would,
out evil? Very well.
yeah. Um, and
You die, and you die, and you die.
Well, he
yeah,
did that in the flood, and everybody was like, "How could God? Here's my peekaboo, my, like, why did he
Right.
do that?" Yeah. But
yeah,
I also think
people,
it's funny that, Brian's statement about, you're the evil. I, I'm hearing Jules from Pulp Fiction in my ear. Like, I used to think
I
I
am
was
the
just,
tyranny of,
but then
yeah,
it occurred to
sorry.
me that I'm the tyranny, and yeah, yeah.
The call is coming from inside the house.
And so when you wrap your head around just the terrible cost of being in God's presence, um, and the centrality of that to their identity and to the very meaning of human existence. Then when you get to passages like Zechariah 3, it takes a turn here. And I think you'll see what, like, I think this will help illustrate what I'm getting at. If you'll indulge me here, I'm going to read it. Is that cool? It's pretty short. It's 10 short verses. So and just to set this up, this is after the Babylonian exile. The temple has been destroyed by the Babylonians. God's presence has left, and this was about 70 years earlier. The exiles have returned, but there is not yet a temple. Um, and so the prophet Zechariah has a vision. Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of Yahweh, and Satan standing at his right side to accuse him. Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Yahweh, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is not this man a burning stick snatched from the fire? Now Joshua was dressed in filthy clothes as he stood before the angel. The angel said to those who were standing before him, well, let's not get ahead. So the high priest Joshua, he's dressed in filthy clothes in the presence of Yahweh with Satan, the prosecutor, the accuser, accusing him. So as the high priest, he represents all of Israel. Having all these filthy clothes on, that's the sin of Israel. Um, and there's no temple, there's no way to cleanse the sin. And he's in the presence of God, which is why Satan is accusing. He's like, by all rights, by everything we just read in Leviticus, he should be struck dead. Instead, the angel of Yahweh, the second person of the Trinity, recognized as the second person, as the pre-incarnate Christ, he is interceding on his behalf, rebuking Satan for him. Then the angel said to those who were standing before him, take off his filthy clothes. Then he said to Joshua, see, I have taken away your sin, and I will put fine garments on you. Then I said, put a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him while the angel of Yahweh stood by. The angel of Yahweh gave this charge to Joshua. This is what Yahweh Almighty says. If you walk in obedience to me and keep my requirements, then you will govern my house and have charge of my courts, as in you'll run my temple, and I will give you a place among those standing here. Listen, high priest Joshua, you and your associates seated before you, who are men symbolic of things to come. I'm going to bring my servant, the branch. The branch, as you might know, is a title for the Messiah taken from Isaiah chapter 11, where he says, a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. Jesse's the father of David, and from the shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a branch will bear fruit, and the spirit of Yahweh will be upon him. And this and what follows is one of the more conspicuous messianic prophecies. So the branch became a title for the Messiah. So this is a messianic prophecy, and he says to the high priest Joshua, the namesake of the Messiah, Yeshua, who are men symbolic of things to come, I'm going to bring my servant the branch. See the stone I have set in front of Joshua. A stone mean like God himself is providing the stone for the temple. There are 7 eyes on that one stone, or 7 facets on that stone, and I will engrave an inscription on it, says Yahweh Almighty, and I will remove the sin of this land in a single day. And that day, each of you will invite your neighbor to sit under your vine and fig tree, declares Yahweh Almighty. So I've had time to think about this. So if it's not obvious what's going on there, I'm happy to explain it. But given what we read in Leviticus and the exacting demands of sacrifice for sinful humans to come in the presence of God, for the high priest of Israel to be in the presence of God, filthy with the sin of the nation, and for God to say to to remove his filthy clothes and replace them with clean clothes by decree, and then to promise that he will remove the sin of the land in a single day. Um, and it's with this finality that renders the the Levitical system obsolete. Like it's something that is following up, and then they will in that day each of you will invite your neighbor to sit under your vine and fig tree, declares Yahweh Almighty. That's an idiom to signify um, national security and prosperity. Like that's kind of a luxury thing for everyone to have a vine and fig tree. Um, and they're without a care in the world. You find the same idiom in other messianic prophecies, but the point of that is like they it's a situation that is utterly hopeless within the system that is established in Leviticus. Um, he's filthy with sin with no way to cleanse it to be in the presence of God, no way to restore Israel to their former glory, to their identity as God's chosen people, as the land where God himself dwells. But here God is promising through the Messiah to remove their sin in a single day, and that with this sense of with this finality that that leads to this lasting peace and prosperity. So that like passages like that, they don't really have the same weight if you don't understand Leviticus and how the temple works and the stakes of offering the right sacrifice. Um, so yeah, do you guys have any thoughts or questions or reflections on that?
No, not specifically.
Hmm. Does that knock out any rapid fire questions?
No. Now, but I think a handful of the rapid fire questions are overcome with the conversation.
Oh
because
yeah,
we
most of them got
covered
answered. Yeah.
why was it focused on sacrifices, clean and unclean, the same as morally good and evil? Why do Christians say Leviticus no longer applies? Dietary laws, Day of Atonement, what's it really about? We covered all that. Um, the big one was number 9. Why should modern readers even care about Leviticus? And we just kind of that was the our three-way conversation 15 minutes ago that we dialed in on. So I feel like we kind of covered all of the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So roll credits.
Well, there is one final piece of information that I think would put a cap on this.
Okay.
So the Babylonian Talmud, a portion, Yoma 39b that's spelled Yoma 39b, talks about how for the 40 years leading to the destruction of the temple in the year 70 AD, there were these 4 signs that they took to mean that God was no longer accepting the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement. A custom had emerged where when they drew lots for the scapegoat and the sin offering, if the lot for the sin offering came up in the right hand of the priest, that meant that was taken as a sign that God accepted the sacrifice. For 40 straight years, up until the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, the lot came up in the left hand. And by the way, just to reiterate, this is the Jewish Babylonian Talmud. These are the Jews who wrote this. The second sign was that they would tie a scarlet thread to the scapegoat, and if God accepted the sacrifice, it would miraculously turn white, which it typically did. For those 40 years, it did not. And this is drawn from the prophecy of Isaiah about how though your sins are like scarlet, I will make them white as snow. That's where that scarlet thread originated. The other one was that the seventh light of the menorah, the one that's farthest west, closest to the Holy of Holies, closest to the presence of God, that it wouldn't stay lit, which suggests that the light of the menorah represents God's presence among them. It's the light of God, and it represents the tree of life. But so that didn't stay lit. Also, the doors to the holy place would open of themselves, and they were typically locked and under guard, and only opened for when the priests entered in. So the opening of the doors implied that the Jews no longer had exclusive access to God. So these 4 signs, according to Jews, meant that God was no longer accepting the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement for the 40 years leading up to the destruction of the temple. The number 40, obviously, it's a major has major prophetic typological significance. It's the number of judgment. It's the number of years they wandered the wilderness. It's the period of a generation. Rain for 40 days and 40 nights in the time of Noah. So it's a meaningful number that carries a lot of weight. Of course, 40 years earlier is the year 30 AD. I found all this out the other day because I asked ChatGPT. The 3 synoptic gospels mention that when Jesus died, there was an earthquake that caused the curtain in the temple to tear in two from top to bottom. I asked ChatGPT if there was any corroboration of this in any Jewish or Roman writings. What it gave me was Babylonian Talmud Yoma 39b, where they don't mention the curtain in the temple tearing in two, but I think what they mention is quite a bit better. According to the Jews, with the death of Jesus, the the sacrifice of atonement was no longer accepted by God because it was obsolete, because the way to God's presence is now open to everyone.
Mhm.
And so the all of the blessings of having God dwell in your presence are now available to everyone through Jesus Christ. The Jews, as long as they claim the covenant of Moses, they are under the curses that are described in the book of Leviticus. The only way out is to accept the new covenant foretold by Jeremiah, in which their sins are taken away in a single day. But the value of that, that the price of covering our sins once and for all, I don't think you can truly appreciate without Leviticus. That's what makes his sacrifice meaningful, and the blessing of being in God's presence, and not just being in God, having God dwell in you as the temple. The value of that is established in Leviticus. So if you haven't read it, read it, camp out on it. It's worth it. But it also occurs to me that the Holy of Holies is supposed to be exclusive, except to the high priest. Um, Leviticus itself, and Leviticus 16 in particular, is sort of the Holy of Holies of the Bible. So anybody who wants to can access it, but only if you have the faith to believe that it would be worthwhile. So it's sort of parallels the covenant itself. It's accessed by faith. Not faith in a set of doctrines that you have assent to, but belief that coming into the presence of God and understanding God's person as expressed in this book is worthwhile. So I think that's all I got.
Nice.
You guys seem underwhelmed, but maybe it'll grow on you.
No, I'm whelmed.
I think I'm whelmed.
I'm whelmed.
Right in
I
there.
mean, it's a tough topic. At some point we had to do it. So if we want to go from our exciting incarnation to the academic Leviticus, well, suck it up. Be our fans anyway. Um, I think it was informative. I think that anybody that listened to this probably learned something, and if they didn't,
They
they're
weren't paying
lying.
attention.
Yeah, yeah, they're like, I
They
knew
they
all of
te-
that.
they minimized the tab and let it run. They weren't paying attention.
That's right.
Don't do
So
that.
yeah, or do it because we need the views.
Well, I
But
mean, yeah,
yeah,
turn it on every day and click on it again.
every
Like,
day,
I don't
every
care.
day, like while you're at work, just let it play. Let it run, let it run. But
I think my closing thought is that the changing of Brian made the comment about, the problem of evil and divine hiddenness, those issues. I would point out that the simple fact that the stereo instructions were created, the Holy of Holies, and then God decided that now it's time to move on and send the Son to fulfill all of that is an example of open theism. But that's a discussion for another day.
like
I disavow.
he just threw
Disavow.
that in there like boom.
Just had to sneak a little heresy into my
Hey, it's only heresy if it's wrong.
Yeah, that's that's I can't argue with that.
uh,
It's like,
yeah, I,
when you lead a revolution, you're only a traitor if you don't win. Ask the watchers.
Mm.
They
I-
knew they would lose. That's so weird.
Did they? Did they
Why,
know they would lose?
why would they think they would win?
That's the question for the ages.
They're smarter
Uh,
than me.
Are
I,
they?
I,
Are
I
they?
do, I do think that we read that with the omniscience of hindsight.
Right.
I think they knew something bad was going to come, but it was all kind of unprecedented. It was uncharted territory.
Right. That's why I don't think they knew.
And they're
Like,
like, and these clowns suck anyway. We can have them for
right.
eternity.
They're like, God
They
doesn't
will
really care that
never.
much about these things. These little monkeys.
These little monkeys. She fine though. I'm trying to.
It's a cute monkey.
I do feel a lot better about
It's kind of like Helena Bonham Carter as a monkey.
this got weird.
I mean, why did Mark Wahlberg kiss her before, the supermodel blonde? Like, what is happening?
Because the supermodel blonde was kind of dumb, and I think it was off-putting.
He
Like
was
she was
he was
she
about her
was.
brains, huh? It's all about the brains. Didn't mind it. She didn't shave.
Have you ever like? Have
For
you ever
anyone who's
like?
stuck around this long.
If anybody's lost, this is a Planet of the Apes conversation, is what just happened.
Yeah,
In case nobody
like
understands who Helen Bonham Carter, because she's not in the Bible,
She
yeah.
is not.
nor is Mark Wahlberg.
I have had the experience of approaching a beautiful woman, um, and engaging in conversation with her, and then within the first minute realizing I should not have done this because she is like barely conscious or probably doesn't read.
And this
And
won't
I
be
can't
consensual because she's barely conscious.
and I
So.
can't and I can't risk doing that to my kids. So I gotta extricate myself from this. And so I think that's why yeah. I think that explains that part of Planet of the Apes.
We solved it. We solved
We
Leviticus.
solved Leviticus.
We
It's,
uh we
That was a
proved that
tough. That was a tough nut.
that is the axis O the Bible. It's my
Or the,
personal
or the,
relationship.
or the Torah.
That's where I land.
but I would recommend, like, if you read Leviticus and then read Matthew 13 through 17, and there are very cool parallels there.
I believe you.
If, by the way, anybody wants to do some, I would at least recommend, because there's maybe only two of you listening to this that are actually going to go read Leviticus now. Like, let's be honest, you're not going to. You should, but you're
You
not
totally
going to.
should.
But I would like to think that more of you are interested in this chiastic model. And what you should do is go look for chiasms in other places because they do exist. I mean, I did a quick little check to see where else it exists. There's some in the book of Revelation. Romans is chiastic. So like that could also be
So
a new thing to go try to do. The book of Jonah, and Isaiah has chiastic principles throughout
I
it.
mentioned a chiasm in John earlier,
Mhm. I think you
which
said
is
John too.
John 2. So, and I'll just run through it real quick. I'm not going to go into the details as tempted as I am, but it starts with when it revolves around the temple. So this is where Leviticus is important. He goes to the temple, which is obviously the legitimate temple of God by the legitimate religion, by the legitimate authorities, and he delegitimizes it. Flips over the money changers, says, "How dare you turn my father's house into a market?" And they ask him, "Well, what sign can you show us to show your authority to do this?" And he says, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." And then immediately after that, Nicodemus, a man of the Pharisees, which is the respected holiest party of Judaism, who is also described as a ruler of the Jews, so probably a member of the Sanhedrin, he came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could do the signs you were doing unless God was with him." So here, Nicodemus represents the legitimate Jewish authorities from the legitimate temple that Jesus has just delegitimized, acknowledging that they know who Jesus is, like, or at least they know that he is a legitimate spokesman for God, if not the Messiah. And then he tells them, I tell you the truth, no one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again. And then he commences to explain about how believing in this believing in the Son of Man is how to be born again, how to have the presence of God dwell within you and remake you. In essence, you become the temple. And then the next thing is he's in Samaria. The Samaritans were kind of they were rejected by the Jews as fake Jews, and they had their own temple on Mount Gerizim, and so they were outcast from the Jews, and then the woman at the well was an outcast from her fellow Samaritans. Um, and he tells her she turns the conversation to this debate between the Jews and the Samaritans about where the right place to worship is. You Jews say we must worship in Jerusalem, but our ancestors worship on this mountain. And Jesus tells her, I tell you the truth that the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem, but the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth.
In America,
Um,
in Alabama.
so the point is, like, there was a correct side to this controversy, and she was on the wrong side of it. The right place to worship was in Jerusalem, but that was soon to be moot. So the chiasm is in it starts with the legitimate authorities at the legitimate temple, which he delegitimizes. On the other side of the X is the outcasts, an outcast among outcasts who becomes one of the first evangelists. She believes his word, and then she goes and tells her fellow Samaritans, who then come and believe in her. And Jesus is pretty excited about this harvest. So basically he goes to the highest and delegitimizes them, and then he goes to the lowest and tells them that, you know, they are soon to be the true temple. And in the middle of it is all about being born again to become the new temple. And it's, you know, taking that, and in light of Leviticus and all that it says about the temple, it kind of underscores what a big deal that is. And that it's kind of the fulfillment of of Zechariah's vision about how Yahweh will take away the sins of the land in a single day. Um, but
That was
yeah,
not quick.
it was under 3 minutes.
It was not quick.
What was it,
We're at
four
the end of the
minutes?
show, and you
See,
Well,
this is quick. Here's an example of a chiastic style is the story of Jonah. So Jonah flees from God, and then when he gets swallowed by the fish, the sailors repent and they're pagans. And then Jonah prays and asks for forgiveness while he's in the belly, and then the Ninevites repent, the pagans. But then Jonah still resents God when it's all over with. That's that's kind of the same ABCBA concept. But that was way faster than what Brian just did.
well, Jonah as a book is much shorter than John 2 through 4.
That's what you're going with. That's why it
John,
was shorter.
the whole book is shorter than John 2 through 4.
It's a pretty short book.
Yeah, okay.
Or I have a superpower for brevity.
And you also left out like really cool, important details too.
Not around chiasm.
Right.
I drove that point home. And honestly, I forgot Jonah was a prophet. Like that gets lost on me. The story is like God told him to do something. He was like, no. And then all this stuff happened. So the story is like a commentary on obedience.
Well, it's an allegory for Israel as a people.
Also
They're,
that.
they're
But
supposed to be prophets to the nations, but they're jerks and they keep it to themselves.
All right, we solved it.
we did. Get us out of here.
We did. So, with that, I will say, especially when it comes to Leviticus, stay curious. Brian already enlightened you, and we're going to see you next week. So, God bless. We're out.